There's a virus out there that really keeps infectious disease experts up at night. It's called Nipah. It's a pathogen that first emerged from the shadows years ago, and honestly, it still demands our full attention. Let's get into why. The very first thing you need to understand about Nipah is this number: a case fatality rate between 40 and 75%. Let's be crystal clear about what that means. In some outbreaks, up to 3 out of every 4 people infected don't survive. It's a statistic that immediately puts this virus in a league of its own and really sets the stakes. So, a virus this lethal, where does it even come from? Well, the answer isn't some lab. It's in the natural world. It comes from a process known as zoonotic spillover. That's when a pathogen makes the jump from an animal to a human. Yep, Nipah is a classic zoonotic virus. Its natural home, or what scientists call its reservoir, is the terrapus fruit bat. You might know them as flying foxes. Now, these bats can carry the virus, often without getting sick themselves, but they can pass it on, and that's what starts a really deadly chain of infection. Let's just take a quick look at how this has played out over time. Nipah first really got on the global radar back in 1999. There was an outbreak among pig farmers in Malaysia. But since then, it has caused recurring, often yearly, outbreaks all across Asia, especially in places like Bangladesh and India. This just proves it is a persistent, stubborn threat. Right, so this history of it popping up again and again is a big part of what makes Nipah so incredibly concerning to global health organizations. But believe me, there are even more urgent reasons for the alarm bells. And look, this isn't just a regional worry. The threat is absolutely recognized at the highest level. The World Health Organization, the WHO, has officially flagged Nipah as a priority pathogen. What that means is they see it as a serious, legitimate candidate for a future global health crisis. And here is the most crucial and frankly terrifying point. Unlike COVID-19, where we were able to develop multiple vaccines and treatments, our medical toolbox for Nipah is startlingly empty. There are no approved vaccines. There are no specific therapies. Treatment is basically limited to supportive care, just trying to manage the devastating symptoms as they happen. So this complete lack of medical countermeasures, combined with how lethal it is, brings us to a pretty sobering comparison with a virus we are all now intimately familiar with. I mean, just look at these numbers. The fatality rate for the seasonal flu, it's a tiny fraction of a percent. For COVID-19, it's typically in the low single digits. Nipah? Well, it's in an entirely different league. This massive gap just highlights the devastating potential of every single infection. These viruses also target the body in fundamentally different ways. While we know severe COVID-19 for its assault on the respiratory system, Nipah's main target is the brain. It causes something called encephalitis, a really dangerous inflammation of the brain tissue, and that can have absolutely catastrophic consequences. Part of what makes Nipah so insidious is how it shows up. The initial signs are deceptively common, and they do a great job of masking the severe illness that is rapidly developing underneath. So the infection starts with symptoms you might easily mistake for the flu, a fever, a headache, a cough. But then it can escalate incredibly fast. The severe phase brings on neurological symptoms like confusion and seizures. From there, the progression to brain swelling, coma, and often death can happen in as little as 24 to 48 hours. It's just terrifyingly fast. And for those who do manage to survive the acute illness, the battle is very often not over. Survivors can be left with serious, long-term neurological consequences, including things like persistent seizures and even dramatic personality changes. And in some cases, the virus can lie dormant and then just reactivate months or even years later. Okay, so with such a dangerous virus and no specific treatments, our most powerful weapon becomes prevention. And understanding how it spreads is really the first step toward protecting ourselves. So the virus really has 3 main pathways. First, it can jump from infected animals like bats or pigs directly to people. Second, it can spread through contaminated food, most famously raw date palm sap that bats have come into contact with. And third, and this is crucial, it can spread from person to person through close contact with bodily fluids. Prevention, then, is all about breaking those chains of transmission. This means things like rigorous hand washing, avoiding any contact with sick animals, and staying away from food sources that could be contaminated by bats, like that raw date palm sap. And in areas where there's an outbreak, avoiding contact with the bodily fluids of infected people is absolutely paramount.
So all of this really brings us to a final, critical question. When modern medicine doesn't yet have the answer, when we literally have no vaccine and no cure, we are left to rely on our own knowledge and our own actions, right? So, in the fight against Nipah, the single most effective tool we currently have is awareness. Understanding the risks, recognizing the symptoms, and practicing these preventative behaviors, that is our first and our best line of defense against this silent killer.